Hey folks, Jeremy with Dragon's Breath Glassworks. We're going to make a fish for you today. We're going to get back to our regular sort of demos and demo pieces. I'm going to jump right into it. I'll talk a little bit about the different techniques we're going to use while we're working. I've preheated the pipe. I'm going to go into the furnace and wind up my first gather of glass. When the glass comes out of the furnace, it does look orange only because it's so very hot. It's actually crystal clear. It's a little over 2,000 degrees coming out of the furnace. I'm going to color it in our pre-mixed purple frit. There's about 5 shades of purple here that I've pre-mixed together. That'll give you some nice depth and vibrancy of color when you melt it and sort of twist them together. These are larger chips. They're size 3. They're all from Rickenbach. The larger chips take longer to melt in, but they have a denser coating. So for a fish, something I don't really blow out and stretch very much, I only need the 1 coat of color. Now right now it's spots of purple, and that's fine, but we're gonna do a little twisting of the color just to get some movement in there. So I'm just gonna swirl the color just a little bit with my tweezers. The positioning of the swirls isn't really that important to me as long as the coverage is good. Now there are little dimples in there from where I pinched it, little divots, and those are going to be a problem if I don't melt them away. If I go back in the furnace and get more glass on top of this without melting them first, the viscous glass is not going to flow into those divots, and it's going to trap air bubbles. So to prevent that, I melt in most of the texture inside the furnace, and what doesn't melt, I'm going to press away on this steel table. This is a marver. Smoothing that out. Now this is solid glass. Before I move on to the next step, I'm going to make it hollow by blowing into it. Pressure builds up and has to go somewhere. My thumb is holding the air in on the backside, so it's going to have to go out the front where the glass is. And to do that, it's going to have to push the glass out of the way first. And that's a slow process at first, but then once it starts moving, there it goes. You get a little bit of a bubble. It starts pushing out at the sides, getting bigger. Hopefully that's coming through on the video. There we go. Now from this, I can make just about anything I want. This is a starter bubble. Bowl, plate, vase, wine glass, a fish in this case. Now for a fish, I like a longer starting shape than that. So to get that, I'm going to give it a swing. Now it doesn't stretch a lot because it was already cooled down, but it's just a little bit. It gives it a little more of a bullet shape rather than a ball. There's not a right or wrong way to do this. I say that a lot, but it's really just personal preference. And this is the shape I prefer to start with when I make a fish. Now we have this purple powder here as well. It's the same kind of thing. It's one of the same colors that's in there, but it is a powder, so it's going to go on a lot lighter and a lot more evenly. We're going to use some of that for the fins. We're not going to color the entire fins purple. Most of them are going to be clear. We're just going to do the very tips in purple. I'm going to go back in the furnace, wind on my next gather of glass, and shape that up using my favorite shaping tool, which is just ordinary paper that I've soaked in water. I like paper because it's as close to hand sculpting glass as you'll ever get. You can really squeeze that glass into shape. I prefer a really wet paper. Most glass blowers prefer it a little drier than I do, but I like to stay on and really squeeze and sculpt, so having that extra wet helps me. Now I'm pushing this glass down the piece. Now there's a lot of extra clear glass on the bottom, and I'm squeezing it, tapering up that back end. Now I'm ready to move on to the next step. You see that steam rolling off that paper? That steam, by the way, is what's allowing me to use the paper as a tool. It's creating a barrier between the glass and the tool, protecting the tool from the glass and the glass from the tool. It works the same way when you use a wooden shaping block. All right, so I'm going to take this and reheat it. I've added a hose so I can blow into the glass and shape it with tools at the same time. And the reason I need to reheat right now is anytime you touch glass with tools, you're cooling it down, but especially so with wet ones. And you're really cooling it unevenly. That surface layer gets much colder. The core is actually warming back up, so you get these layers of cold, hot running through the glass. And so it's best to just give the whole thing a good reheat and let everything even out before you try inflating it. If you don't, then things will blow out unevenly and be difficult to control. So I am going to cool the back end here though, just a little bit before I shape. And I'm going to start inflating this area while squeezing down with my jacks. The area I'm squeezing down is the jack line, and it will be the mouth of my fish at the end of the process. Now I've got this really hot, it's still moving quite a bit. That's intentional, because I'm going to grab this nub, this clear nub on the end that I pushed there in the very beginning, and stretch and blow out the fish. Now this is doing two things. It is just lengthening the body of the fish, but it's also making the jack line area very thin. And when I want to shape the lips of my fish at the very end, it's going to be helpful that they are thin, because they're going to heat up with the torch faster. Now this is not really very fish shaped, but we're going to flatten it and start making our fish. In a moment, John's going to go into the furnace when I get out of his way, and he's going to grab some glass, and we're going to make the eyeballs for our fish. So I'm going to first flatten it on this graphite pad. Hopefully I've got that position where you can kind of see it. I like graphite because it doesn't take as much heat away as steel does. Give this a real short shot of heat called a flash, and then I'll come out and get out of John's way, and then we'll add some eyeballs. And I'm going to drop the first eye right there. And the second. When your shears are sharp and the glass is hot, it cuts really easily. Now I like to shape my eyes using my torch. First I melt away the cut lines, and then I sort of press in little eyeballs. John is going to start on what will be the pectoral fins of our fish. We're going to drop a blob of glass right here. It's going to be mostly clear, with just the back edge of it will be purple. And we're going to get that by taking the clear glass out of the furnace and rolling it through some color just on the back side, so that way when I cut the glass, that colored glass will be right at the cut line and will be only in the tip of the fin. Every once in a while, even though I don't want to change the shape of the fish, every once in a while I have to reheat it. If it gets too cold, it will shatter from cooling unevenly and too quickly.
Is it big enough?
That's perfect. John's going to roll the back edge of that glass through the color. Then he'll bring it over to me. Very nice, John. And we're going to deposit that right, well, you can't really see it very well from John's positioning. That's all right. So we dropped it right there on the belly. I did not discuss with John beforehand that he would need to come from a different angle. And that's something that's pretty important in a glass shop. When you're working with someone, you need to communicate with them what you need and what you're expecting on the piece. So I'm gonna clean that up. Clean that up. Very good. And it didn't really get the color transition that I wanted. That powder is very thin, so it didn't really make it into the fins. That's okay. It was an experiment. It didn't quite work out, but we're still gonna make the fish. He'll just have clear fins instead of purple ones. No big deal. So those fins aren't very pretty right now. I'm going to grab some tweezers and shape them up. John, you can start the dorsal fin. I'm going to pull these out. When you bring the dorsal fin, John, just come from in front of the bench, like from the rail side, and I'll make it work. So I've stretched out our fins. John is getting up the glass he needs. I'm letting these cool off just a bit. John's going to shape that into a cylinder, and then he's going to kind of squish it flat on the table. And he'll bring it over to me. From right here. And good. And I know you can't turn with me on that. That's fine. Very nice. Thank you, John. Now, I'm going to add some more texture. I'm using a fan crimp. You could use tweezers if you wanted to. I like the fan crimp because it's a little faster and a little more uniform. and then I will stretch my fin. It's best to do it on that initial heat because that's where it keeps the best movement. If you go and reheat, you're going to start reheating the body. You're going to stretch a little differently, at least I do. Stretch a little more than you want. I'm going to take a flash of heat, and then I will remove the fish from the stick, and John will torch his mouth while I open up his lips. So that fin's on the backside, still moving around quite a bit. I'm going to let it cool in sort of a position where it looks like it's moving. There we are. There's our fish. Now we're going to break it off and add some lips. Gentle tap. It pops right off. Go ahead, John. John's getting that torch right on the mouth. The goal is to melt away the sharp edge, get it moving a bit, and then I'll use the blades of my shears to just stretch that mouth open. That's good. I'll get in there. There we are. John's going to glove up. And we're going to put our fish away into an oven to cool down. So John's going to warm up the gloves because that glass is still about 1,000 degrees, though cooling rapidly. And if those gloves are too cold or damp, they are going to break the fish when he touches it. So into the box, please. Anywhere you'd like. Beautiful. This goes into a 925 degree cooling oven where it will stay for the rest of the day. When I'm all done working, I'll start that cooling cycle, bring everything down to room temperature very slowly. That's called annealing. Cooling things slowly over time to reduce thermal stress. If you liked what you saw, please like the video, subscribe if you'd like. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Y'all have a wonderful day.